Okay, I'm going to take you through question 4 now of the language paper. In this presentation, I'm going to look at the November 2013 paper as a model response, but there are also models on the 10 Mark Challenge website from the June 2013 paper as well. Okay, so question 4. It's the most difficult question in the paper. Students really struggle with it. It's asking you to do a lot. This is a higher tier paper. It is assessing your ability to understand language. So really important that you pick out some of those higher tier language, basically. So it asks you then to compare the use of language. So first of all, first thing to do is when you look at question 1 and 2 and 3, you're going through and you know what you're going to be asked and you're highlighting accordingly. So have a highlighter that is very specifically coloured for your question 1, 2, 3 answers, and then have a different language highlighter. So you can just highlight unusual words and phrases that stand out to you as you're reading the sources for the other question. That's the first thing, and then that will make it kind of easier when you come to question 4 in looking at the papers, at the sources, and deciding which one it is that you want to write about. Okay, so first thing then, really what you're being asked to do is to select unusual words and phrases. Note the question is asking you about language, it's not asking you about language features. So as much as language features are often helpful in understanding language, actually just writing about the use of words and phrases is really important. So being able to say the use of the adjective, the use of the verb is also really important. That is writing about language. And then it's making sure you have a detailed comment on effect of those to be able to give a full response. Okay, so the first thing that people tend to get wrong is they don't give a detailed comment on effect. So people tend to write things, oh, this really grabs the reader's attention, or this really draws the readers in, or sticks in the reader's mind. These phrases are meaningless. Well, not meaningless, we just write band 1 comment on effect next to them when we, as examiners, read them, which is about an E grade kind of response. It's a standard thing that people write when they talk about effect. Well, this really grabs the reader's attention. Well, lots of language does that. So you can only say that if you then say because. So make sure that because is in your writing, especially if commenting on effect is something that you find difficult. This really sticks in the reader's mind because you can only use that phrase or those phrases if you use the word because, okay? Because that will help you explain the effect. Your answer should be about the choice of the word and the effect of the language feature if there is one there. It needs to be kind of connected to the text. So you compare the language, not the absence of them. So don't say in source 3 we've got descriptive imagery and here's an example and this is the effect. There is no descriptive imagery in source 2 because actually the absence of one isn't a comparison. Go in knowing some linking connectives, so things like both, whereas, similarly, in contrast are useful phrases to know. There are also things like more intense or equally as vivid or darker language or sharper verb choice are those really kind of higher, more sophisticated and perceptive responses. So draw on the effect of the choice of words. I know I'm going on about it, but words are really important. What does that word mean? Why is it important? Okay. Okay, so the purpose and the audience are only important in that it helps you to understand the writer's choice. You don't really need to go on about them. Okay, they're not part of the effect. And essentially, really, this is a higher tier paper find some higher tier language, okay? One thing that people get wrong here is they think, right, okay, I need to find some language features, and they say, right, here's a rhetorical question, here's some alliteration. Well, actually, you can quite often be limited in those responses. You're much better off talking about the use of words and phrases, and then how alliteration might reinforce this or emphasize something. So be careful in your comment on effect, okay? Okay, so here's the success criteria for the response. Pause that, have a little look through, and then one of the best things you can do now is actually to pause this video, look at the 2 model answers that are there on the website, and annotate them accordingly. Look at what they do to be better, really. What does one do that the other doesn't? Okay, so here is a model response then for question 4. It's a good answer. It's got a kind of clear understanding really of some of the language, and takes you through. Pause it, have a read of it. Don't just let it flick by here on the screen. Stop it and read it. And it just goes through. It's got a kind of clear, it's a clear response. And what this student has done here is they've talked about source 1 first of all, and this is an easy way for you to structure it as well. Is they've got source 1, they talk about their source in detail, and then they've moved on to source 3 with a connective here similarly, and they've got a paragraph about that, and then they've got a 3rd paragraph that talks about the comparison of the 2 texts. Okay, so they've broken it down. I'm writing about one, I'm writing about the other, and then I've got a comparative response. Okay, I think by the time you've done that, you'll be about 18 minutes in and you'll have about 7 minutes left. So then just go through and pick out detailed language. Okay, go through and find examples of language that you can write a lot about the effect of, and that's very similar to the literature really, and picking apart quotations, really pulling out on how what the effect is of certain words within a quotation, what that means and how that contributes to meaning. Okay, so you'll see then in this second model, it's the same response, but better. Same technique. Write about one, write about another, compare the both together, and then actually then just find things to write about. Okay, so the only way that you can get better at doing the question 4, it's difficult. The only thing to do is practice writing, comparing language features in 25 minutes. Get 2 articles that you haven't read before and do it, okay? Then use the models to assess, have you done it well, what else might you say, how could you make it better, okay? That's the only way to get better, is do it, look at what you need to do better, and then do it again, over and over and over again, okay?